Now, is this thing on? Yes, it tells me I'm on. All right. Sorry about that. I was trying to actually schedule the live stream and make it work that way, and I don't get the interface. It seems like I have to, I don't know, I'm gonna have to do some work on it. Could not possibly troubleshoot that in 4 minutes. Normally I just do these as ad hoc streams, and was trying to make sure that it was actually scheduled so that people could, be waiting for it on a set time, yada yada yada. And I don't know, boomer tech, guys, whatever. I don't know why it has to be so damn complicated, but that's the way it is. So we'll get started in just a second here while we wait for a couple of people to get into the thing, and we'll go from there. But going back out over Restream like it's supposed to, because the minute I tried to do it some other way, it didn't quite work. So, all right, you're late and gay. Nice. Are you coming to the run tonight? All the marbles. That's all I really want to know. I want to get through this because I want to run RFK tonight, and I got to finish my brutal armor quest for my warrior. So there you go. All right. Because it's been a long day. Just go with this. Boomer tech. There it is. Fine. I'll embrace my my Ludditeness. All right. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Tonight is Friday night. It is the 20th of September. It is probably the day we should start talking about a potential post-mortem on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Interesting. Tom was busy getting his shield talking points for, yeah, Putin called, dude. You guys were, I was detained. When Vlad calls, I take the call. 26 is more than high enough to run RFK. We should be fine. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about repo rates too later on. We're going to talk about the end of Saudi Arabia. So while I try and settle down out of abject mortification for getting this thing like off the ground, like the Fed tried to get the repo auction off the ground earlier in the week. Oh, technical troubles. We're sorry. Well, because demand was so high that it looked like the World of Warcraft servers from 2 weeks ago under a DDoS attack. Yeah. Let's do this. Saudi Arabia, they're going to have the same problem in a few weeks and a few months. We're talking World of Warcraft. RFK is Razor Fin Crawl. So let's do this. So earlier in the week, I wrote an article asking a lot of questions about what happened, what was going on with the Iran, with the attack on Saudi Arabia's airfields, right? Glad you're entertained, dude. Are you not entertained? All right, so it's my Maximus moment, or really it's my Minimus moment, but let's. All right. Oh God, so many digressions in one sentence. Can't believe it. All right. So on Monday, I asked a whole lot of questions surrounding the attack on Saudi Arabia's major oil processing facility, most of which had to do with cui bono. And Alex over at the Duran were kind enough to quote the article and use it as a jumping off point for their discussion earlier in the day, which I watched, which was very good. But one of the things that one of the things I was doing on that article when I wrote it on Monday was I was trying to be generous because we didn't have a lot of information. And I didn't want to jump to too many conclusions about what was going on. If you guys remember Monday night, I talked about this. I said, I think my base case here is that the Houthis did this with Iran's blessing and probably Iran's technology, because it doesn't make any sense to me otherwise. They had upside here. The Houthis had upside. I didn't really talk about the Houthis' upside in my article. And I said, and if you think about it, the only real upside for Iran would be putting the kibosh on the Saudi Aramco IPO and a number of other things. But Alex were very good today and in extending that a little bit farther and saying that really this puts into question the entire U.S. Saudi-Israel alliance. Now, I've been kind of talking around that in a lot of ways 4 weeks now. Honestly, since the drone was shot down back in June. Because when you look at the events, Saudi Arabia is the weak link. Alex Mercouris made that point this afternoon. I've been making that point either here on these live streams or for Newsmax, in some fucking forum that I've written in, either publicly or privately. I have made that point that Saudi Arabia is the weak link in the alliance between the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. It's not a unique, I'm not the only person saying it. I just want to make sure that, credit is due here. I'm glad that Alex agrees with me. I'm glad that other people agree with me on this, because I think that that's the important thing here in the analysis, right? That you go after Saudi Arabia for all the reasons that I've stated 1,000 times. They're running a 7% budget deficit relative to GDP at $60 a barrel oil. They need $85 a barrel oil in order to balance their budget. They need the Saudi Aramco IPO to bring in somewhere north of $400 billion in order to shore up their balance sheet, be able to continue to issue sovereign debt, which they've started doing, and because they have to be able to maintain the peg on the dollar. Because if they don't maintain the peg on the dollar, then Trump is going to put the kibosh on the whole thing and pull out of this alliance, because the Saudis have no leverage over us, especially with us producing 12 million barrels of oil a day, or 11 or 12 or whatever the hell we're producing, some ridiculous number. So, moreover, this month's newsletter, and for those of you who haven't read it yet, please do read it. And for those of you who watch this stream and aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing over Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns to the Gold Goats and Guns investment newsletter. Because in it, I make the case quite categorically that OPEC and OPEC Plus are coming to an end. And honestly, that the days of countries being able to get together and set prices in the oil market via cartel are nearing an end. Because both Russia and the United States and China are all putting pressure on OPEC to stop setting prices. I think Iran would be very happy to do this. Would be happy to break away. All these things are happening, and one of the things that Alex brought up today, and Alex Mercouris brought up today, and he's absolutely right to do so, is to say, look, when all of this is happening here, Iran is about to move into the Eurasian Economic Union and enter into the free trade deal with the Eurasian Economic Union. Don't kid yourself. The ruble is going to become a regional reserve currency. It's going to become the reserve currency of the EAEU, without a doubt. It's the strongest currency in the EAEU. It's the most widely used, and it's going to continue to grow in strength as more bilateral trade is done in the Russian ruble across Central Asia and the Middle East and even China. So the Saudis have to get this Aramco IPO off the ground. They've been trying for 3 years, but with a $2 trillion valuation, i.e. they're selling 20% of the company or $400 billion. Wall Street's been choking on this. The book runners on Wall Street have been choking on this for 3 years. They haven't been able to sell this idea. The Saudis came out last year and put a bullshit valuation on their oil reserves at well north of like $4 trillion, some ridiculous number. Well, at the same time, the Russians just came out today and put a vastly undervalued valuation on their natural resources at just under $2 trillion. That's for all. That's including the gas, the oil, all the minerals, the gold, the platinum, the tungsten, the uranium, all of it. Less than $2 trillion. Now, fuck a whole lot of that. The Russians are probably worth $30 trillion. But when you're a functionally rich country, when you have a functionally solid balance sheet and competent leadership, you can understate your resources. As a matter of fact, understating your resources is probably the best thing to do, because it's not like anybody wants, it's not like they want the ruble to appreciate heavily from here. It's not good at this point for the ruble to appreciate. They're trying to internationalize it. They need to up the liquidity of the ruble in international markets. Paging Elvira Nabalina, the head of the Bank of Russia. Oh, by the way, it'd be nice if there were some fucking rubles on the market for people to actually trade. Just saying. So what's happening here is really interesting. The attack, so that was Monday's article. Wednesday's article, or I think it was Wednesday's article. Not Wednesday's article, it was yesterday morning's article. Sorry. Yesterday morning's article riffs off of Pepe Escobar, who makes the very salient point that there's scuttlebutt across the Middle East that the Houthis could make a quick dash towards Medina and Mecca and activate their allies in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, the Shiites, by the way, who tend the Saudi oil fields that work for Aramco. And all of that happens all at the same time, and they go for the jugular against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That's what's on the table at this point. And if they can't get the Aramco IPO off the table, why do you think, the minute I heard that the Saudi oil minister come out and say, oh, no, we're going to be back to full production no time, very soon, don't worry about it, this is not going to hurt things, I knew exactly that this was about the Aramco IPO, without a doubt. That the Houthis did it, the Iranians are snickering behind their beards. It's all about the Aramco IPO. And other things, and the Israeli elections, and Vision 2030, and the war, and ending the war in Yemen. And so when you factor all this in, it's so very obvious that whatever happened here, and I'm still not convinced of any story that anybody's told me, but whatever happened here, the Aramco IPO was the target, and Mohammed bin Salman's reign as a de facto leader of Saudi Arabia was as well. So it was a brilliant move. You starve the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as Thordum just pointed out. You put into stark relief to major investors around the world who are about to invest $400 billion. They want a guarantee return on that investment. There's not going to be any of this, well, they're not going to be able to run this IPO the way they run their fucking Air Force. Okay? Because it's getting to the point where the Saudi Arabians army is so inept, and Air Force is so inept, that they're going to rise to the level of the Italians in terms of, racial jokes. How do you sink an Italian submarine? You put it in water. How do you knock a Saudi airplane out of the sky? You put a Saudi pilot behind the stick. I mean, whatever. You put it in the air. So, how do you beat Saudi Arabia in a war? You go to work the next day. Because they're no threat, right? So. So, go back 3 weeks. And Moon of Alabama and I both said that Houthi drone that landed at the other oil field was the inciting incident for this. The Houthis proved then they have the technology to set up this strike. Now, was this an elaborate scheme? We're gonna send this drone over here to make everybody believe that we have this capability, when what they actually pulled off was far more complicated than that. Maybe they smuggled the drones in across the freaking desert, or hopped them across the desert, or they literally just sent dudes in and did actual sabotage. That these weren't pinpoint strikes, that these were actually shape charges placed on the friggin' buildings, on the storage tanks, and then just blew them all. And then lobbed some missiles in the general vicinity, as a good show. Don't discount any of those ideas. Doesn't really matter. What it proves is that the Saudis can't defend their shit. Because every attack that we can most likely attribute to Iran on oil infrastructure in the past 6 months have been of the variety of, your shit's gettable. Get it? You understand? We can get your shit. We can blow it up. We're not going to do any damage. We're not going to hurt anybody. We're not going to do any of that stuff. We're just letting you know your shit's gettable. All the other attacks that have responded to those attacks have been of far more dramatic effect. Those, I think, are all false flags, either set by the Mossad, MI6, or some other thing. So this is why, when I looked at the initial results the other day, to me, it screamed false flag. I wasn't convinced of this, but I thought, this seems over the top. This seems like the kind of thing designed to get Netanyahu reelected by trying to immediately pin the blame on Iran and say, this is why you need to vote for me. Iran is out of control. Trump won't do what he needs to do, which is to wipe them off the planet. I'll go speak to Trump. I'll go get him to convince him, because Benny Gantz won't be able to do it. Blah, 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 blah. The typical fucking Netanyahu shuck and jive. And to me, it just seems so very obvious that was one very, very, very plausible angle here. It was either fired from Israeli submarines, or they were shape charges, or yada, yada, yada. So I could believe any of that stuff. So, but this is a turning point. The Global Hawk shootdown, or whether the MQ-4 shootdown, it's a variation on the Global Hawk. The MQ-4 drone shootdown is the inciting incident here. It's the turning point. It's the thing we're going to look back on in our history books, and we're going to go, everything changed on that date. Every fucking thing changed on that date. When Trump didn't go to war, it was over. Because the United States was revealed as a paper tiger. They can't use their weaponry. Because if they use their weaponry against their enemies, they'll blow up the financial markets that are the real source of our power. So, I mean, when you're faced with that dilemma where you have all of this power and you're impotent to use it, and since then, the neocons have gone crazy. Trump was right to fire John Bolton, not because John Bolton is a crazed fucking warmongering neoconservative Zionist lunatic, but because John Bolton was never loyal to Donald Trump and to America. Because he's not out of the fucking door for 24 hours and he's throwing Trump under the bus. He and Lindsey Graham and the rest of them. So it doesn't matter if the Houthis make the attack that we're talking about in the next 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. The longer that bin Salman goes without suing for peace, the higher the likelihood that something more dramatic is going to happen. Because once the Saudis are truly starved of money, because the oil markets don't believe that the Saudi Arabians are going to stop pumping oil. Or they don't even care if you take a couple of million barrels off the market right now. That's how oversaturated the market is. That's how overvalued oil is. I've been saying all year, oil has to correct in the 40s. If you think that things are tense with Saudi Arabia now in the 60s, just wait till Brent crude's trading at 45. And they don't have any mechanism by which to stave off the problem. Because they have to keep a peg to the US dollar. Meanwhile, China's making deals with Iran left and right, and Russia left and right. China's been offering to buy Saudi oil in yuan for 2 years now. Saudis can't take them up on that offer, because otherwise Trump will shit can them. It's just crazy. Tweety Bird, what's NEOM? If you wouldn't mind. Because I know it's the name of a pretty cool tile laying board game, but I don't know what you mean by Neon. Bagel Flinging Dragon says, I disagree. I think oil should be $35. Hey, look, dude, I'm going to start with $20. I'm going to start with a $15 drop or a $20 drop. If 35 happens in a market overshoot, I would not be surprised. Look, truthfully, I think the medium price of oil here is around $45 a barrel. Oh, okay. Thank you. It is. Interesting. Interesting. Because it's a game about building the city of the future in the desert, so interesting. Thank you. All right. Question: why do Saudi ships have glass bottoms so they can see their Air Force in action? Beautiful. You guys, this is beautiful. That's fantastic, dude. I can't wait to use that one I'm going to use that one in real life. That one's fucking beautiful. I'm sorry. I love the Italian. I mean, dude, I love the Italian warfare jokes. They're fantastic. I mean, come on. Don't you want to buy a nice Italian rifle? Never shot and only fired once? No, never fired and only dropped once? Yeah, it's fucking great. I got to fuck the damn joke up, too. It's terrible. So, no, seriously, guys. The Saudis, from every angle, are in trouble. I mean, my article from yesterday. Let's just... I hate to bust my hand, pat myself on the back, but it's my stream, so hey, we're going to do this. That's not what we want. We want to talk about this one right here. So here's the gig. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullet points because I think everybody knows that the Saudi Arabians are in serious trouble, right? Everybody's now beginning to get worried about this. And that there's something else coming down the pike, and that diplomatically, the calls by Pompeo and Bolton and the Saudis, very unconvincingly, and everybody to try and tie Trump's hands diplomatically so he can't sit down and talk to Iran, that he can't sit down and talk to Putin or anybody else for any, that's what they're going to use this. That's the best they can use this for now, because they need to do that and wrap this up in a whole bunch of lies to tie Trump's hands to reveal a whole lot of, to conceal a whole lot of very relevant truths. The Saudis cannot defend their home. Okay? This is the most valuable real estate in the world. It processes half of the Saudis' oil production. Some of the most valuable real estate in the world in every sense of the word valuable. This is not for very small values of the word valuable. This is for very large values of the word valuable. As Moon of Alabama pointed out in a post that if you guys haven't seen it, you should go look at, about Saudi's air defenses and how they're arranged and how they're designed, because they're based on U.S. systems, which are not based on defense and systematic and overlapping systems of defense. They're actually just forward-facing shields to cover any small counterattacks while the U.S. goes on massive offense. That's what the Patriot missile systems are for. Somebody else pointed out that U.S. naval positioning is not prepared for a step up in violence. The carrier groups are not in the Persian Gulf. I watched a great 35-minute interview with the head of the IRGC Aerospace Forces, who said, look at this. This Bolton makes this big freaking show about moving we're moving warships into the Persian Gulf, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, they didn't. They got 2 carrier groups sitting in the Arabian Sea. They've got nowhere for these guys to go for R&R. They send them out into the middle of the fucking desert. You think these guys are going to fight at their highest capability? He's like, it's terrible that the U.S. treats their soldiers this way and their seamen this way. It's terrible. 35 minutes worth of fucking red pills from an Iranian general about the state of U.S. political and military readiness. Pretty sad. But it was absolutely a direct appeal from him to Americans. And I actually absolutely recommend every fucking Trump supporter who thinks he's gonna MAGA with this nonsense fucking foreign policy that he's had. If you think that's the case, you need to sit down and watch this interview. You might learn something. Point number 3, the Iranians believe they can hit targets up to 2,000 kilometers away. How true that is versus U.S. air defense systems is questionable. I don't know whether these claims are true or not, but so what? But the Iranians' attitude towards this is staunch missile defense. They don't have much of an air force. They don't have much of a navy. They don't have much of either of those things to speak of. A good friend of mine continually points out they have no air force. They have no navy. We'll just go in and we'll just EMP the crap out of them. I'm like, yeah. After the Iranians have launched every fucking missile they have and turned the entirety of Israel and Saudi Arabia that matters into a fucking parking lot. And the UAE and everybody else. Good news for you. That's what's going to happen. The Iranians have made this abundantly clear. They have the warning systems to know. They have the anti-aircraft. They have the anti-missile systems to deal with. They have the anti-aircraft systems to inflict thousands of casualties. Not only will Israel and Saudi Arabia be turned into a parking lot, but an awful lot of U.S. soldiers and seamen are going to die. And a lot of ships are going to be destroyed. The Saudis have now lost nearly all of their external support. The coalition against Yemen has collapsed. They've alienated Qatar. The Houthis are winning. Egypt won't join Trump's Arab NATO. Very important point. That started the ball rolling down this hill because we were supposed to have the Palestinian surrender deal of the century back in February. Still hasn't even been put on the table. Now Netanyahu's out of power. Jared Kushner's now he's now an appendix in the Trump administration. Hopefully he'll be gone soon. Hopefully he'll be in fucking jail. We can move on with our lives. And OPEC Plus is floundering as Russia sets the price of the marginal barrel. Not OPEC. Saudis are hemorrhaging money left and right. They can't defend their shit. All their shit's gettable. They've got an inept air force and an inept army, and they have to hire mercenaries. The money's running out soon. When you think about all those things, yeah, the Saudi Arabian kingdom is a paper kingdom. Because we're not going to go to war for them. The United States just said this. Donald Trump just proved it. There's a clear attack on the Saudi Arabian oil infrastructure that would could have potentially ground the world economy to a halt if it's going to take 6 months to rebuild this. The strategic oil reserves around the world are going to cover a couple of months of that. At best, United States oil production is already at capacity and starting to fall over. Why? Because fracking is bullshit and produces unbelievable amounts of red ink. Okay? Trump wants zero-bound interest rates, more QE, and to be able to refinance the debt to 100 years at zero-bound interest rates. Are you kidding me? When you start to think about, when you start to really think about the situation in the fracking industry, I don't think we go to 13 or 14 million barrels anytime soon. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. You know why? It becomes an even bigger fucking bubble that bursts like you wouldn't believe in a classic Austrian business cycle boom bust of like it'll be like a textbook example of an Austrian business cycle boom bust. It'll be brilliant. It'll make us look like the smartest motherfuckers on the planet, which, you know, admittedly we are, at least economically. Unfortunately, we're not in power, because if we were, things wouldn't look this way. And we wouldn't be talking about the potential warfare here, because central bank policy wouldn't be aggressively underwriting all of this freaking war and war materiel. Really, Brundlefly? You've never heard that these guys have been swimming in red ink since the beginning. It was all supposed to be that this round of fracking was supposed to actually make money because they hadn't spent so much money on the land, right? Because a lot of the land that they bought up in the last bust, and now their financing costs are so low they'll be able to pull the oil out of the ground at $35 a barrel. That's a lie. they're still generating unbelievable amounts of negative free cash flow. David Stockman's book, Peak Trump, goes over this in grave detail. So I heartily recommend Stockman's book, if for nothing else, than for him to explain that, plus the end of the monetary and credit cycle scenario that we're in right now. And those two things together, along with China being at full capacity, there's no room to grow. So I hope he was being sarcastic. But yeah, fracking needs around 60 from what I understand it, around $60. So it's okay right now. But Trump wants, oil prices, doesn't want them any higher than 60, doesn't really want them much lower than that. But they also need zero bound rates. Because if they have zero bound rates, or if they have lower rates, then they can do more rounds of financing at, to the pension funds and they can to the pension funds that are sitting on piles of cash they don't know what to do with because there's no place to actually put that shit. So they'll throw them into these fucking oil fracking junk bonds paying 7-8% because they know that if they price them that high, paying that high a return, the pension funds will soak them up because the pension funds need 7.5% because they've got guaranteed friggin' payouts to pay out. So it's all bad on this side, on this side of the ledger, on the U.S. Israeli Saudi side of the ledger. It's all bad. And I'm not saying this because I'm against the policy. I'm saying that I'm against the policy, but the world is caught up with and has a solution for how to deal with the policy. At some point, if you try to maintain your strength through unsustainable means, through money printing and force, which is effectively what all of this is, and money printing is just force, stealing through inflation. If that's the case, eventually it will collapse of its own making. You can't run the world by force for very long. You can do it for some amount of time. You can't do it for long. And eventually it always falls apart. Max Kaiser called out for a lot of people have Zero Hedge has been on this point for a while. There was a window where it was. I mean, it's $60 a barrel oil, I think it is, but it's not. But we have now built this massive production that is unsustainable because we're now into a global debt saturation recession. The Fed holding interest rates high is actually forcing, a slowdown in China, which isn't going to get Trump his trade deal. It's just going to get him a global recession, which is going to then put upward pressure on rates while the central banks are all trying to cut to keep the dollar from going to 150. This is what's going on right now. That's what the repo windows are all about. So it's why this stuff has been going on this week. So, all right, let's move over into why the repo market. All the marbles asked about this earlier, and I know people want to talk about this and what I think is going on. So the Fed on Tuesday opened up an emergency repo window of $75 billion. They got $53 billion in bids because the overnight lending funding markets went crazy on Monday night, right? And SOFR, which is the new replacement for LIBOR, which is supposed to be a market-based version of LIBOR, went ballistic the other day, right? It's been hilarious. So, I always get distracted whenever I look at the chat for any length of time, because then somebody says something and I want to respond to, but I need to stop saying it. So I need to try and stay on target. It's actually terrible when I actually look away from my ungodly mug. So the Fed opened up an emergency repo window on Monday, Tuesday, for $75 billion, got $53 billion worth of bids. The bids that came in did not do enough to bring the overnight rates down below the Fed funds target rate and or the interest on excess reserves rate. So there's the Fed on Wednesday, does the same thing. It's oversubscribed to the tune of around $85 billion. The rates still don't come down below the Fed's target. The Fed comes out at 2 o'clock. They lower rates by 1/4 of a point. They hint that there's going to be more QE. They disappoint the markets because they didn't do more, of course, because the markets are all addicted to this cheap fucking money and ridiculous fucking liquidity. And then they do the same thing on Thursday, and finally rates start to come Thursday and Friday. Finally, both of these repo markets are oversubscribed, but the rates have come back into the target range. So the stress has gone away as this paper's been dumped onto the Fed. Now, the question is whether that paper is going to whether those transactions are ever going to get reversed or not is a very, very good question. And has QE actually started? So, why? What happened here? Well, over the weekend, we had an attack on the Saudi oil fields. Oil jumped 22% on Monday morning from $60 up above 72. You think somebody was short of a few dollars? Mark Bogosian, one of the regulars here, noticed on Friday that, hey, on Monday, he said, hey, the WeWork IPO is in serious trouble. Who was the primary book runner and the primary investor in that? Goldman Sachs. Goldman, who's the head of the Treasury Department again? Steve Mnuchin used to work for? Goldman Sachs. And how many Goldman Sachs guys are in the Trump administration? A lot. On Friday of last week, did JP Morgan get called a criminal enterprise by the Department of Justice and suit filed against them for precious metals manipulation on Friday? Did that investigation not expand on Monday? Did I not say on both Mondays and Fridays live streams that I thought, that's just Goldman going after JP Morgan because Goldman's in trouble. But Goldman has the keys to the candy store. And I've been telling you for a long time, a lot of you alt-right guys, and I guess you're alt-right, but whatever. A lot of you guys who are still obsessed with the fucking Rothschilds need to stop looking at the Rothschilds and need to go look at the vampire squid in the fucking room, because the 800-pound vampire squid in the room is Goldman Sachs. They're the ones that are setting fucking policy right now. That's what you need to look at. The Rothschilds are 19th century, early 20th century. Goldman is 21st century. They're the bad guys. They're the ones in charge. And of course, and you're right, all the marbles, that this fight is 100 years old, that Goldman and JP Morgan hate each other. No lie there. But right now, JP Morgan was in a favorable position under the Obama administration. They're not in a favorable position under the Trump administration. And no shit and no lie. But as this thing accelerates, guess what? Now remember, I've also said, and I said this in an issue of the newsletter like last year, when the 1MDB scandal was really starting to roll up major players at Goldman, including costing Lloyd Blankfein, the former CEO, his job, along with the head of Asian trading and along with a couple other people, that Goldman is riding high and they control the Treasury Department and everything else. But there's still there's still a very palpable odor in the air that Goldman's going the fuck down. Ryu comes in again, has to disagree with me. He said there's a 1,200-pound vampire squid in a room. Fine, dude, go for it. So it's all about Goldman at this point and how pervasive it is. Tension reminds us that Nomi Prinz did a great job detailing Goldman's extensive influence in U.S. politics. Heartily recommend you look at that as well. So, and then we saw something today on our, again, our private Slack server. For those of you who are not members, we talk about really important shit on a regular basis on my private Slack server. We have people in there who really know their shit, and more so than me. I learned palpable odor of Palpatine as an Emperor Palpatine. Love the Star Wars reference. Will always stop the stream for Star Wars reference. Now, and again, somebody mentioned today, saying, look, Daniel DiMartino Booth, and I know you guys know who she is, came out and effectively said that the Fed is opened up these windows to bail out frickin' Goldman again. And Here's the quote. She said, "The Powell doesn't want QE. 90% of Americans would agree with what I'm about to say. Is it better to bail out Goldman Sachs again, or we the people? QE introduces this dynamic. QE is technically bailing out the banking system." And she mentioned Goldman by name. Now, she mentioned Goldman by name on purpose, because Goldman's the one in fucking trouble. Goldman was probably short oil, because oil was ready to break down. Certainly at $60 a barrel, that 55 level was looking really weird. And I talked about this multiple times. Again, my twice weekly market reports that I do for my subscribers on Wednesdays and Sundays, I go over this stuff. I go over the charts in detail, and I'll put my ability to read a chart up against anybody's, frankly. And again, not busting my hand, patting myself on the back or anything, but shit, if you just look at the fucking candlesticks, you'll see. If you look at the candlesticks and you look at them through time, you'll see the picture. And Goldman was seeing what I was seeing, and if I was Goldman's trading desk, I'd have been short oil. And then when this thing came down the pike, and maybe they didn't know about it, maybe it caught them flat-footed. Monday morning, they're fucked, and there's a funding mismatch, and there's a maturity mismatch, and they need freaking paper. They need money. I don't think Goldman's going anywhere. Do I ever trade in the equity markets or just commodities and Forex? I don't trade. I only analyze. I am a terrible trader because I'm a terribly emotional individual who cannot separate his emotions from his analysis when my money's on the line. So I don't trade on the fly, but I do analyze. And I find that I'm a better analyst when I don't have a stake on the table. I make this point abundantly clear, and it's part of what I do in the newsletter is to say, look, we're not traders. None of us have those. I mean, very few of us have those skills. There are people who buy the newsletter who are professional traders, and I absolutely am willing, to entertain them from that perspective if they need that. And I'll be able, if they want help from that, if they want actionable information to help confirm or deny what they think they're seeing, that's great. But I refuse at this point. I've traded. I've lost a lot of money trading. I'm not any good at it. And I haven't ever gotten any better. The more I learn, the worse I do. So it's just my personality is all wrong for trading. It absolutely is. You need to be a sociopath. Like, you don't want a guy who's got high empathy being your fucking surgeon, right? I'm dead serious. Like, there's a place for psychopaths and high sociopaths in society. They're called surgeons. They like cutting up people. They're good at it. They can divorce their emotions from the fact that they're cutting up a live person. Just as long as they, do their job, everything's fine. But they can. So no, I don't trade, and I know a lot of people try and call me out on that and use that as a means by which to take me down. But it's born of hard-won experience. It really is. So, it really is. So, it is what it is. So, I used to get that a lot on when I was writing for Seeking Alpha. Well, dude, if you like the stock so much, why don't you own it? Because the minute I own it, then it affects my analysis. Yes, analysis and trading are two completely different set of skills. So I would rather get paid a comfortable middle-class lifestyle to analyze things for people than to live in a fucking barrel trying to trade the markets based on my analysis, because that's what would happen. You have to have zero empathy to trade. Yep. And you can't, dude, I'm way too, I'm way too neurotic to trade. I truly am. I mean, I truly am way too neurotic for that shit. I just can't do it. So. No, I mean, you guys see, I don't hold anything back when I do this, right? That's part of the reason why apparently a lot of you like coming here, which is great. I'm okay with that. And this is therapy for me in a certain way. But you understand that, I'm giving it to you unvarnished. Like, I don't have any skeletons in the freaking closet. This is what I do. This is who I am. raw, unfiltered, whatever's coming out of my fucking head. And news for you. You don't want to see what I look like when trading because it's not good. All right. I'm not taking the bait to talk about goats right now. So back to Goldman and the repo markets, it's very obvious. It's not boomer rage, dude. This is Gen X rage. It's much more targeted and real. Because most of it's targeted at boomers. God damn it, I'm a baby boomer. How could you say that? We stopped the war, god damn it. We're baby boomers. We put man on the moon. No, maybe we really didn't. Oh, yeah, so. We love watching Tom drop F-bombs like a B1 Lancer. So, it's a matter of discipline. True emotions are bad for trading. Yes, there's a reason why George Soros is so damn rich. The man's a psychopath with a God complex. That's why Jim Rogers doesn't work with him anymore, because Jim Rogers isn't a trader. I've met Jim Rogers. I can tell you flat out that guy cares about things. He's not an aloof man. What you see in interviews with Jim Rogers, absolutely what you get in person. And he's an investor. He sees things, he makes plays, he makes plans, he thinks of things from the long-term perspective. He makes strategic bets. He's not tactically oriented at all. He makes strategic bets. And so for me, it's a lesson I've learned. For me, the newsletter is about, and certainly the format of a monthly newsletter is certainly about making strategic bets, because you don't have the ability to be nimble unless you're in constant contact with all of your people at all times. And again, then what are you doing at that point? Like you're running a trading service? Like, really? I'm running a trading service. I'm not doing the geopolitics. I'm not doing the research. I'm not doing the head work necessary to synthesize the headlines, right? Because that takes time. That it's something that forces you to write about it on a regular basis. When you're forced to write, it helps to organize all this garbage in your head and put it on paper. And sometimes it's not particularly well organized, but you got a modicum of skill as a writer. You can craft and do the thing, and you do the thing. So there it is. He had kids at 60 and taught them Chinese. Jim Rogers is a hell of a guy, man. So, oh yeah. So El Vaquero says, he's like, I have empathy, but it completely shuts down when I'm really, really angry. Yeah, don't let that demon out. You don't want to see that demon. You guys have never really seen me angry. I wouldn't want to be around anyone who lacks empathy 100% of the time, knowing what it feels like. Yep. It's funny. I used to play Magic the Gathering from the early days when it first came out. I had my first packs were unlimiteds, for fuck's sake. Never did get a Library of Alexandria out of a pack. More's the pity. I had to trade for one. But that being said, played in a lot of Magic tournaments. Played in a lot of Pro Tour qualifiers. Played in a lot of that shit. Drove all over the Southeast playing Pro Tour qualifiers. And I can tell you something. There was a common thing amongst all the best Magic players. That is, they played with no emotion. They didn't play decks they liked. They played the decks that won. They didn't play the game the way they wanted to play it. They played the game the way it needed to be played to win. Those guys were all proto traders. Every goddamn one of them should either have been lawyers or traders. Right? Now, I stopped playing Magic when I realized that Magic was that kind of game, and I couldn't be that guy to play at the highest level that I would want to play at, because I only want to play those games at a level of competition that's worth my time and effort, which is to play at the highest level. Otherwise, fucking go play something else. Go play World of Warcraft, right? There's no art to that. That's just playing shitty. That's just playing shitty decks and keeping up with the meta, and I don't like that game. It's why I gravitated towards effectively area control games and multiplayer games, because multiplayer games are now about the politics, about systems analysis, resource generation, and then how do you play the players? That's a different game. Some of those cards are worth money. You're damn right they are. I don't have them anymore. I sold them all. Look, I sold my Magic collection for far more than I paid for it. So, Magic the Gathering is a tedious game, is my opinion at this point. It is like games. Again, games like that, competitive games like that. It's either poker of some form or another, where you're now politicking, or it's a straight one-on-one chess match. And Richard Garfield wrote a very famous polemic. The guy who designed Magic wrote a very famous polemic about why multiplayer games suck. And I'm like, that's why I hate most of your games, dude. Because they're all two-player games, and two-player games suck. And I think two-player games suck. I think they're just not interesting. So Michael C asks, at what price do you think derivative contracts would be affected? What oil price do you think derivative contracts would be affected negatively, and by extension, which banks are the most vulnerable? Michael, that's a really good question. I can't answer it without anything beyond basic conjecture. I am not that kind of market professional. I think that we saw a smattering of this and a taste of it on Monday when oil opened at $72 a barrel, 5 days before Quad Witching Day. Okay. I think in general, given the way the market is priced right now, I haven't looked at the futures curve. I haven't looked at any of that stuff, so I can't tell you. And I haven't looked at open interest or anything along those lines. And I certainly don't know who's short and who's long oil. Because again, if I'm doing that, then I'm not doing the things I honestly think I do better. There are better analysts out there doing that and getting paid to do that a fuckload more money than I am to do that. And if I was trading oil, then I would want to care about that stuff, but I don't. I would probably say, if you think $72 a barrel over 60 is bad, imagine what a quick rise to 80 or 85 would do. Okay. Are the repo rates, asked Rhino, anyway related to bond yields? Could we start seeing a spike on the yield curve? Yeah, they will be. Not in the short term, but we're already seeing it. Like earlier in the week, I noticed this. When everything was freaking out earlier in the week, what was happening in the European bond markets? The European bond markets freaked out. When dollar liquidity dries up and people have to start they need to buy dollars, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to sell overpriced assets. You always want to look to where the most money is concentrated and go, well, people who need dollars, how are they going to get dollars? They're going to sell their winners. People sell winners. They don't sell losers into the market. They sell winners because they're up. Hey, this is found money. I'm going to sell this shit and I'm going to buy and I'm going to convert that into cash. And I'm going, yeah, that was good. I'm going to take some profit off the table. That's what professionals do. Professionals aren't holding on to losers unless they can't sell the loser, because then they would have to settle up in such a way that they would go bankrupt. Then they hold on to it. And that's when the banks go to the repo window to go, no, I just need some money. Here, you can have this stuff. It's garbage. It's not worth anything, but give me $500 million for it so I can say I'm still solvent. It all is absolutely, they're all tied together at a certain level as derivatives of each other, as a knock-on effect of other things. So yes, to answer your question. Ryu, Bagel Flinging Dragon, asks, do you play dominoes? I've played it a couple times. Not a lot, though. But dominoes is good. Like Mexican Train? It's a good game. I don't play it all that often. It's a good game. Are we buying Bitcoin or what? At this point, you should be. But I would be on a regular buying program right now. I wouldn't be like holding all my cash back to like make a strategic or tactical bet. I would just be buying every once in a while. Okay? I would be on a regular buying program saying, I've got $200 at the end of the month. I'm going to buy this much Bitcoin. I'm going to buy this much gold, or $500 at the end of the month. I'm going to buy this, and this. And that's what I would do. Because right now, Bitcoin is coiling. It's absolutely not going anywhere. And so, therefore, you want to be accumulating, but you want to be accumulating slowly, and you want to hold cash reserves because it could drop, and you could, potentially get a nice sale. Is Deutsche Bank at the Fed window again? It's a very, very distinct possibility that Deutsche Bank is at the Fed window. I'm not going to say that it isn't. So certainly Commerzbank might be, given the headline from this afternoon, that they're going to axe another 4,200 people. Remember that once the European bond markets start to fall over, and we almost had massive reversal signals on both the weekly and monthly charts. In the weekly charts, we got the reversal signals. On the monthly charts, we almost got them in 1 week across the German yield curve, across the French yield curve, and across the rest of them. So if that starts to happen, and remember, 75% of all interest rate derivative swaps in Europe are cleared through Deutsche Bank. And if Deutsche Bank can't clear those transactions, they got to go to somebody for the freaking money. What's the best way to Bitcoin that cuts down on fees? It's a good question. I don't know what that is. Bitcoin is an expensive asset to move into and out of. Expect to pay 2%. That I know. Okay. Was that a good answer, all the marbles? You think I was right about? You think I'm right about that? Because if you think I'm right about that, then that's my intuition. Remember, I'm just like pulling threads and putting them together. I'm doing this shit on the fly when you guys ask me questions like that. The Umpire's Post has said, well, it seems crypto markets are somewhat controlled now with futures, options, shorts, etc. What I would say, actually, to the contrary, Umpire's Post, is that with those things coming into play, and we having on-chain settled futures and all this other stuff, that what that's doing is actually bringing in the infrastructure necessary for professionals to come into the market and professionalize the market. Now, that's going to tamp down on volatility that we've seen in the past. But at the same time, that's both up and down. So I'm okay with Bitcoin not doing the kinds of dramatic moves that it's made in the past. And I'll be honest with you, from here forward, it would be better for Bitcoin in the long term if we just saw slow, steady, and inexorable rise to 12,000, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 on a percentage basis, where you're moving from 10,000 to 15,000, it's a 50% move, but from 15 to 20, it's only 33%. It's only a 33% move, and from 20 to 30, it's then 20 to 25, it's only a 25% move. And at some point, and if that takes 2 years to get the 50 grand, I'm okay with that. I'll take a 5-bagger in 3 years or 2 years. Would you not? Because you're going to get a 5-bagger in gold over the next 3 to 5. So there you go. All right, it's 58 minutes. I started late tonight, and I got to run through Razor Friend Crawl I want to do. And I'm tired. Though I did have some caffeinated coffee because I had a nap that did nothing but make me tired. So I got up, I had some coffee, I did the thing, I fucked up the opening of the stream. It's a Friday night. What else is new? All right. How much paper Bitcoin have banks put onto the market to manipulate it? It's a good question. I don't know. That's why I like the on-chain settled futures that have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Approved, and should have started trading by now. All right, guys. I appreciate everybody's time and attention, and of course, as always, your patience with Boomer Tech to start the evening. As always. If you like what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. If you want to get a hold of me, you can DM me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can do all the other things as well that we normally do. Please share as far and wide as possible and all the happy jazz. You can sign up for the newsletter over Patreon/GoldGoatsAndGuns. All the links are down below. You guys know the drill. I shouldn't have to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, because if I don't say it, people don't act on it. And you can donate to the stream either through PayPal, cryptos, or Brave rewards if you have installed Brave. And if you haven't installed Brave, click the registry link down below and get me a $5 tip in BAT, which is horribly undervalued. So I'd like that. All right, guys, you take care. Be well. We'll talk soon. All that stuff. Don't fuck any goats. Keep your stick on the ice.